we're just chit-chatting behind screen and then, oh no, we're going, because we could talk probably for days on the subjects that we love to talk about. So
Yeah.
anyway, welcome to Your Pet's Life Coach. I'm here tonight with Dr. Chris Bissett. Hi, welcome. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Yes.
Me?
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
It's just so lovely always to talk to you. Dr. Bissett is a holistic veterinarian, and she is out of Wisconsin, but you do consults, right? You still can do consults where you can talk to people.
I spend most of my time consulting with other veterinarians.
Yeah.
So I talk a lot with other veterinarians, and then we do a thing called Curate the Bowl,
Oh, that's right.
which is really fabulous. It's free to pet owners. And what they do is go on herbsmithinc.com and you fill out the quiz. And it gives me all the details that I need to really be able to understand how I can help that person. And then I'm kind of looking at it like the big picture. And so I might recommend, well, you need acupuncture, you need chiropractic, or you need this product, or you need to change to this food. And I give suggestions for free. I look at every single one of them every single day and give recommendations. And then the people can take the recommendation or not, or they might come back and take it down the road. But at least what I try to do is look at it from a holistic perspective and kind of point them in the right direction. So I'm not physically talking to customers or clients, pet parents every day, but I do it through Curate the Bowl. And then if I have more questions, we'll go back and forth, or if they have more questions, they'll go back and forth with me. But totally free, and it's actually kind of fun for me to do because it kind of keeps my toes in the
Yeah.
veterinary medicine.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting how quickly you kind of lose it if you're not in it. Because I know I left the
Yeah.
veterinary field as a vet tech. I left many years ago. It's been 20 something years. And sometimes just today I had somebody, we have a diabetic dog staying with us. It's a very unique kind of case, and she's boarding with us. And I actually had, I had to call the vet. I was like, okay, I can't remember, because when you're out of it, when you get out of it,
Yeah.
you can lose it. So it's good to kind of keep your foot in there. But you
Yes.
spend a lot of time, you're formulating diets and doing all sorts of stuff. She has, Dr. Bissett has 3 companies. You are crazy.
It is. Yeah. I would, I think in hindsight, if I had known what I was getting into, I probably wouldn't have done it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I did it because I saw that pets in my veterinary practice did so well their whole lives. And I felt like I had such amazing herbs that I needed to share with the world. And that's how Herbsmith was developed. And that was the beginning. And it was really like, if I could get more herbs into people like your hands and fabulous quality stores, that then I would make an impact on pets that I'll never meet in my lifetime. But through you and I would partner to be able to benefit those animals. And the herbs that are on Herbsmith are, fabulous Chinese herbs that have been used for thousands of years. And there's many formulas that are very safe and they're easy to apply to the Western diagnosis. And I said, why on earth aren't we getting this out to the world? And interestingly, you will absolutely find this interesting. I was totally like the pariah. I was like the worst thing. I was like giving away the secret sauce of holistic medicine. And I can tell you that my colleagues, my other holistic veterinarians, just hated me for a long time.
Yep.
Because they felt like, wait a minute, we need to prescribe it. And I said, well, that's great if there's more of us around. But at that time, so it was about 2008, there were only 1,200 holistic vets in the country.
Wow.
And so if all of us worked hard every single day, we wouldn't even scrape the surface of the pets that needed this. So
Right.
when they would say to me, how dare you give this out to the world? I would say, how dare you not?
Right. Right.
Because these are, and I'm not, there's a wide spectrum in herbs. Herbs can be anything from licorice, cinnamon, ginger, really very simple, almost spice types, up to like aconite that is very strong and could be toxic. So I'm not suggesting using those toxic herbs, but I'm suggesting using very safe herbs that are easy to apply. And if we benefit, 100,000 patients, yay.
You're
So
talking about kind of like the over-the-counter herbs
correct.
versus, right? Like you can
Yeah.
look at it like that. Like we're talking about the safe over-the-counter Advil. I'm not saying Advil. Don't give your dog Advil, but I'm just saying like the over-the-counter
Yeah.
versus like what would be more a vet really needs to be involved in this.
Right. Like I wouldn't do a over the counter for seizures,
Yeah.
even though those herbs are very safe.
Yeah.
You need a veterinarian involved.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, because the
But
cause of
for
seizures can
something
be
like
so wide.
arthritis,
Yeah.
everybody might have the diagnosis of arthritis, and then kind of what we were talking about before we started the broadcast was you either have nothing or you have these really toxic drugs. And so, okay, there's something in between there. So, and the in between is let's use herbs.
Yeah.
Let's use herbs and let's use glucosamine and chondroitin and hyaluronic acid. Let's use things that come from food that nourish the cartilage, and let's use herbs that are anti-inflammatory and pain relieving without any negative side effects.
Yeah.
So rather than just letting your dog be painful or using a really strong prescription strength med that causes liver damage and kidney damage and GI issues, there's got to be something in between. And that's kind of always the area that I've worked in veterinary practice. In my practice, it was always, if your dog has a broken leg, absolutely, you need to be to the orthopedic surgeon. But there's many things that we can do with proper nutrition and fabulous herbs and acupuncture and chiropractic, lifestyle changes, behavior modification, so many things that we can do prior to going to the extremes.
Yeah. That's why, real quick, I just want to, Dee, I want to say hi to you. Dee's gonna be all excited about you. Trust me. She's already like, I'll pay. Yeah, it's gonna be great. But I just want to reference real quick something that somebody wrote here. And Lori, I am so sorry that I didn't tell you to peel the banana first. I told her to freeze her bananas so that she could stop them from turning, too ripe. And yeah, if you try to peel a frozen banana, it's yeah. Peel them first and then stick them in the freezer. I'm so sorry. So yeah, she's gonna give some bananas a little bit for some upset stomach stuff. But so we're gonna talk a lot about, if we were talking as we were kind of talking about what we were going to talk about tonight. We really want to talk. She said I did peel the bananas first. Oh, I guess I misunderstood. Hard to peel. I don't know. We're going to be talking about the middle ground that is, I think, in veterinary medicine is missed a lot of times. And I think it's missed a lot. And Dr. Bissett and I were talking about it is for, I think, a couple of reasons, right? Like fear of hurry up quick, because you're in that acute state sometimes where it's just like, I got to do something right now, especially when our animals are hurting. Yes. And so we kind of do that. And then I think a lot of times, don't you? It's just that the vet doesn't have the middle ground. They don't have those tools or know how to even refer somebody out. I think that's a big thing with vets. They're so afraid to refer to somebody else that might know.
I think we're good as a profession to refer to a specialist to get more extreme.
Yeah, like a cardiologist.
Right. But we're not good at referring to something that's less extreme.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I would say that a lot of the times, and we use the word tools all the time, that was always my kind of goal in life, is that I didn't become a holistic veterinarian because I had some, new age thought process. Not at all. I was just a regular old veterinarian that said I needed more tools. I need more tools in my box
Yeah.
to be able to help every patient that comes my way. And that led me into chiropractic. And then that led me into acupuncture. And acupuncture led me into herbs. And what I found is that I just developed more and more tools. And the beauty was the more tools that you have in your toolbox, the less you have to go extreme.
Sure.
So I as a veterinarian could do surgery. I could prescribe steroids and antibiotics and meds, prescription strength meds, but I never really had to because I could fix those same patients with proper nutrition and with herbs and with acupuncture and talking about behavior changes or things they could change in their lifestyle. So going that middle ground was just, even though it's not as extreme, so it's not like a dramatic change, it takes time.
I was just
And
gonna
I
say that,
was
or as quick, right? Like you don't get that.
right, it's not as quick. So I could appreciate that if your pet is in pain, you're going to give them pain medication and risk all the negative side effects because it's so horrible.
Right.
Then let's go the next step. So what you're saying is that people start pain medication, then they don't go any farther than that. I would say the opposite. I would say use the pharmaceuticals for short term, but then let's start looking at other things that we could do that are more nutrition and lifestyle and nutraceuticals that could support that patient throughout his life and not have to use the extremes of pharmaceuticals. And you know me, Carrie, I've always said, thank God we have, surgery.
Yeah.
Thank God we have pharmaceuticals when we need them.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be our only tool.
Yeah.
That's like everything needs to be hit with a hammer. That's not true. There's so many other ways to go about it.
Yeah.
But I would say that veterinary medicine is still in its infancy in truly adopting holistic practices, in truly accepting that there's more gentle and easier ways to do things and that you could support health and wellness through nutrition and things like that. But I would also say that in a busy veterinary practice, you got patients coming and going and coming and going, and you're going to give them the big guns right off the bat. And I think that we're so fortunate with the internet and with people like you giving these amazing podcasts to educate people, that then it's the responsibility of the pet parent to seek more. So the veterinarian is going to give you the strongest and what they know, but that doesn't mean that you have to say blindly accept whatever they say. Yes, you might accept it at the moment, but then do some homework.
Yeah.
Like listen to a podcast like yours, you do some homework, Google, what can I do to support my pet with arthritis? So we're so fortunate that we can really be proactive pet parents these days because all of the knowledge of the world is like keystrokes away. I mean, it's amazing, actually.
I love that you say Google because so okay. So I love my doctor for some reasons, and some reasons I'm like, what the hell's going on in that brain of yours? You're a doctor, for God's sake. If I tell him I Googled something, he will make fun of me. He will be like, oh, Dr. Google. And I'm like, sometimes Dr. Google's right. Like,
right. And that's totally, to me, that's totally insecurity.
It's insecure. It's arrogant. It's, you know, everything. And there couldn't possibly be another person out there that could be right. And to that, I try to tell my clients, he's good for some things. I know his limitations. And I think that's where a lot of times, even with the veterinary, we need to know the limitations of the vet. I think sometimes, and I wonder if you can tell me this, how you feel about this, because we're gonna start talking about the middle ground for a couple of different things. We're gonna talk. Dr. Bissett and I had talked about. We want to talk about the middle ground for heartworm. We want to talk about the middle ground for flea and tick, the middle ground for cancer, the middle ground for arthritis and back problems, and all of the different things that I'm seeing. I've been faced lately a lot with the all or nothing. A lot of my clients are dealing with some all or nothing stuff. Recently had a cancer dog, and she was faced with the all or nothing. And we talked about it. And as soon as I said it, she's like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." And so we're going to be talking about that. But I want to ask you this quick question that came up the other day for me. Do you think it's right that veterinarians should be the ones who sell the drug? When you compare it to human, right? If I go to my doctor and my doctor prescribes a pain medication, tramadol, I have to then go to the pharmacy to get it. I feel like there's a problem that if the vet doesn't have the right drug, then he might prescribe the only one he has.
Yeah.
And even in his head, he could be thinking, maybe this isn't the right one for this dog, but I don't have that one, so we're going to give this one. I mean,
That's a really excellent point. You're so perceptive on that. That is 100% true. I've been a veterinarian for 35 years. So when as a young veterinarian, that was the way that veterinarians made money. They gave away their knowledge and education. They gave away their examination and their diagnosis, but then you paid them for the medicine. And so that was the way. So old timers really fought that, the idea that this was long before there were pet pharmacies out there, because that was the way they made money. And so unfortunately, what happened is then pharmacies came on board, and now old time veterinarians didn't know how to charge for their knowledge and their services. And that was almost like blasphemy. Like,
Right.
how dare you charge me for your knowledge? and
That's
then
so crazy.
and then and literally those old timers would refuse to give scripts because they're like, absolutely not. You need to buy it from me, or I'm not going to give you the prescription for it. Yeah, isn't it hard to even imagine?
It is crazy to think of it that way.
But so what's happened now with all the pet pharmacies out is now most people are now charging for their knowledge and their diagnosis and their examination, and they're still paying for the drugs. So what ended up happening is actually the pet parent pays more now, pays
Way
double.
more.
Right.
Way
So
more.
they pay for the vet for their knowledge, their evaluation of test results, all of that, which they used to get for free.
Right.
And when they get a prescription and they go to the pet pharmacy, now they're paying the pet pharmacy as well.
Yeah.
So you're right in that there's bias in what that veterinarian used to stock in their pharmacy, but it still hasn't gone all the way to just being purely by pharmacy.
Yeah, I wish it would. I feel like it would be better. I feel like
it's kind of a horse apiece, because what if you couldn't get the prescription right away?
Sure.
Like right now, all the pet pharmacies are mail order. So you don't have a Walgreens down the street that you're going to
That's what I'm wanting. That's what I want, is a Walgreens for pets. Like, I want that too. Like, somebody open it, because I feel like a lot of times animals, when we talk about the middle ground, right? Like, what if all he has, on his shelf is
drug A?
Yeah, like we want to give like maybe a less drug, but he doesn't have it, and then your dog ends up with a higher drug, and you can't even discuss it with him and say, well, I really don't want to give him that, about giving him this, because he doesn't have it stocked. So we do need a Walgreens for dogs, and we should name
you're right. I think in the future that probably is the way. Unfortunately, right now we're kind of in that middle ground, because if your dog is in pain, you want that pill now. You don't want to order it, have your vet call in the script, and then the paperwork gets done, and 3 days later you get it in the mail. Well, my God, that dog has gone through 3 days of excruciating pain. So vets still have to have stock in their clinic to give out right away.
Yeah.
And it's a business decision. It is. Yeah. But I think you're absolutely right. I think with time, it will probably transition. I would say that one of the reasons that it probably hasn't to this point is there's a lot more people that get meds than are dogs that get meds.
Sure.
And so meds have dating too. So if a pharmacy buys it and only one dog is going to use it in 10 years, it's going to go bad and they're going to not be able to use it. So
Yeah.
that's a Walgreens thing.
My brain is trying to think of what I would name my pharmacy. I'm like, I gotta name this pharmacy idea I have. But I think that what I want, our listeners to know is that just because the drug is what your vet is prescribing does not mean it's the only one. That you could maybe go and get a prescription somewhere else for a different drug. So really know your drug that you're giving. And just because I had a vet one time tell a client of mine that Temeral P was the worst thing that she could give her dog ever, and that he prefers Apoquel. And he was adamant that Apoquel is the way to go. Temeral P is the worst thing ever. And so she got the Apoquel, and then she asked me what I thought, and I probably shouldn't have been so harsh, but I said, I think he didn't have Temeral P on his shelf. And she was really, and I go, well, I mean, Temeral P it's a steroid, but I'm not a vet, guys. You all know this, but I don't know how you feel about it, Dr. Bissett, but I feel like Temeral P's been around a really long time.
Yeah.
And I feel like we know more about it. And I don't like either one of them, but if your dog's in pain and suffering, I personally think that I would rather go with that than Apoquel, but that's just me. But I think the whole point, as we dive into the middle ground, which I told you we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different middle grounds for you guys. There are going to be options for you guys to think about when you're standing there, because this is why I do these. I'm hoping that when you're panicking and you're at the vet hospital, that this is going to run through your head, that you're going to stand there and go, wait a minute, Dr. Bissett said I could maybe try this middle ground or that middle ground, and maybe I'm going to do that. Because if you're standing in your vet hospital in a panic, you're going to make, most likely could be the wrong choice.
So I would also say that gets down to knowing your veterinarian.
Yeah.
Like I would strongly encourage somebody that if your veterinarian is not on the same page as you are, then you need a new veterinarian. Because just as there's every spectrum of human beings, there's every spectrum of veterinarians as well. So there's the hardcore, you have to use the biggest darn drug you possibly can, and we need to do an exploratory surgery, all the way to somebody more like me who's going to say, let's do everything else first. Yeah. And then if we need surgery, great, but at least we've exhausted all of these other simpler, more conservative. So if your veterinarian doesn't agree with the way that you think, you need another veterinarian. Yeah. And I literally had people come and interview me, and I was thrilled with it. I'm like, I'm happy to tell you all about me, and I'm happy to look at your pet when they're healthy, not wait until they're really sick until you find your vet. You need a vet that thinks like you think, so that you're both on the same page, so that you're team playing. So if you have a vet who, when you say you feed raw food and they're like, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever, that is not your vet.
Run.
Exactly. You need to run because they're always going to be trying to cram crap kibble down your dog's throat, and you're always going to feel bad about it. And then, relationships start to get bad where you're not going to tell your vet, and then your vet can't properly diagnose because you're not telling them. And you need to find somebody who believes in the same principles that you do. Because really, veterinary medicine in general is an art. And we call it practicing for a reason, because it is an art, because we're all going to do it. We all have access to the same tools, and we're all going to use them differently.
Yeah.
And some people aren't even going to use the more gentle, easy to use tools. They're only going to go with the biggest mallet they can possibly do. And you could criticize me and say the opposite. Say that I am less likely to go into a surgical procedure than I am to try other things. And I might try herbs for too long, where maybe I should have recommended surgery sooner. But that goes back to the art and the practice.
I think it is the art. And it's such a good point, because I've said that, like, we could have 10,000 veterinarians all lined up. They all went to the same vet school, and some of them will be really awful veterinarians, and some will be really amazing veterinarians. I think it all comes down to your true passion.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, in the most simplest forms, what are you passionate about? Some people, they go all the way through vet school because they love animals and they get burnout really fast and they just lose interest. And it's just whatever. Okay, get the dog in and out, whatever. And they haven't, the passion isn't there anymore. Or maybe it never really was there. Maybe their parents pushed them into it. Maybe who knows why they went to vet school. I think because I worked for a vet who I guarantee you went to vet school because he thought he had to, didn't give a rat's ass about dogs or cats or anything for that matter.
Because vets and doctors are people too.
Yeah.
And so they come with their own bias. They come with their own thoughts. They come without any passion. And other ones are very passionate. And yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah. You have, and that's the hard part, right? Like, how do you know how passionate your vet is? How do you know? Like, I look at someone like Dr. Bissett and I'm like, I know she's passionate because she started 3 companies to make sure that animals had access to all of this stuff that they could get access to. And she keeps going. I do the same thing as you. Like, I just see a problem and I will jump in and solve the problem before I think about how this is going to affect my life later. And then all of a sudden I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of problems and I want to fix them. But
I would say the same thing. And that goes back to the interviewing the vet and making sure that they have the same thought processes and the same principles that you have. And I think if somebody is annoyed by you wanting to interview them, they're not your person.
Yeah.
Because that person is the guy who is just there to make a paycheck. He's just there because his family thought he should do it and doesn't have the passion and the love. And somebody who you want as your veterinarian, it looks at you and your pet first. The other thing that I think is really significant is when the vet walks into the room, who do they speak to first? Do they speak to your dog or do they speak to you?
That is interesting.
When your vet walks into the room, they should immediately connect with the pet.
Oh, like, I'm so glad you said that.
The person's just extra.
Oh my God. I am so glad you said that because I'm not a vet, but I see a lot of clients during the day and I'm sitting here like ready to get really nervous because I'm like, I always greet the pet first. I don't know why. Yep. And I catch myself all the time because I'm like, that's so rude of me. I didn't even say hello.
Like in my veterinary practice, I didn't know what people's names were. But I could tell you every detail about their pet. When I saw him in the grocery store, I'm like, oh, Fluffy's dad. How are you? How is she?
Oh yeah. I could tell you everything you want to know about someone's dog. And then I'm sorry. Are you the driver? Like, I feel so bad because I'm like, that is so rude of me not to say hello to the.
No, that's the person who's passionate. That's the person who loves pets. That's the person who does it because they're passionate and love pets.
Oh God! As you were saying, I'm like, oh my God! If she says they need to greet the client first, I'm like, I'm dead in the water. I'm like, I'm dead in the water because I question that all the time. Like, maybe that's a little rude. Like, because I think about like if someone, we're getting so off topic, but it's funny to me. I have thought about this so many times. Like, if I brought my kid into somewhere and someone went straight through looking through because I go straight to the dog and I want to feel him and I want to look at his ears and I want to look at his skin and because I do a lot of microbubbles baths. And I'm like, what if someone this is like a little girl and I'm like looking through everything, but I love to do that.
I think that pet owners appreciate it.
I hope so.
Because when you love their animal as much as they do, that comes through. That is apparent.
I'm so glad you said that. Anyway, okay, we'll move on, guys. I'm so sorry. I am so glad you said that. I was stressed. It's getting hot. Okay, so I mentioned a couple that we want to talk about, but let's start with the middle ground for heartworm, right? We're coming up. It's going to start getting to be summer. So let's do heartworm and let's do middle ground for flea and tick. And the reason I wanted to do this is because it's real simple, I think, for people to be like, you should do this and you should do that. And we always forget that sometimes when you do that, if someone's not going to do it, they're just going to walk out and you're just made it worse. And crazy. So I really want to give you guys the options. I think Dr. Bissett and I both would agree that we would love for you never to do flea and tick medication.
Okay.
But if you're listening and you're like, look, I can't. So let's talk about the middle ground for flea and tick.
Okay.
Um,
So if we start with flea and tick, what I would say is, when are ticks really an issue? So we're in Wisconsin, and in Wisconsin, it's always an issue first thing in the spring. So as soon as it turns 50 degrees, the ticks wake up. They are ravenous and they're jumping on the dogs all the time and getting into the house. So for me, I think that I would use a flea and tick medication like 2 months of the year.
okay.
So as soon as it turns 50 degrees, and then a month after that, I might do one more. But I would also say that I would use milk thistle. And I use milk thistle as a detox 3 to 4 days before I would give a heart guard or a frontline or a flea or tick medicine, and then for 3 or 4 days afterwards, with the idea that if I'm going to use a toxin that I've felt that was necessary at that moment, I also want to give the pet the tools to be able to get over the toxic effects of the chemical that is absorbing into their body. So I would agree that there's definitely middle ground. And what infuriated me was this idea that you have to do it every month, no matter what.
Yeah.
Dead of winter, you need to do it. That's asinine. There's absolutely no reason to do that. But here's why they do it. They give you the little stickers that you put on your calendar,
Right.
with the idea that pet parents are too stupid to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
In the dead of the winter in Wisconsin, I don't need tick medication and I don't need heartworm medication because there are no mosquitoes and there are no ticks. So
Yes.
why would I subject my animal to that toxin for 4 to 5 months that they absolutely do not need it?
Yeah.
The other is that some of these medications last longer than a month. So, for example, heartworm medication lasts longer than a month. It lasts about 6. It actually works retrograde. So when you give it, it clears the body of the last 6 weeks that dog potentially could have been infected with a microfilaria. So if you go, let's say you're in a really heartworm prevalent area, you could use it, but you would use it every 6 weeks, not every month. So that in itself is going to decrease your toxic load.
Yeah.
And then only do it when you need to. It has to have a mosquito involved. So if there are no mosquitoes, there's no way it is going to transfer.
Right.
And so and then if you decide you need to do it, use milk thistle to help them get through it. And there are other lesser things that you could use. So there's essential oils like cloves, and that have they have a strong smell and they repel fleas and repel ticks. So there's other things that you could use as well. Diatomaceous earth that you could put on your soil or on your lawn, or you could put it on your pet as well. That is going to kill fleas. So I would say that in some instances, thank God that we have those medications, but we should use them a lot less than we do, and we should be more intelligent about the way that we use them.
Doesn't it? I mean, it kind of makes you mad when you think about it. It's like, here I am paying this company money and they think I'm stupid.
Exactly.
I'm paying a company that thinks I'm stupid enough that they have to give me a calendar and tell me how to do all this stuff.
Right. And I can't count 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks. But think about it. For them, they're selling 3 times the amount that they would have sold,
right,
if they had done less.
right.
And I think that the idea that it's no big deal. It's fine. It's nothing. Really? It is a big deal.
It
And
is.
it is a toxin. If it's going to kill the fleas and the ticks and it's going to kill heartworm, it's a toxin.
Yeah.
So if we need it, yes, but let's be diligent.
Yeah.
Let's
It is
be like
interesting.
discerning about how we would use it.
Yeah, it's interesting too how you say like it doesn't just stop at 30 days. Like it's kind of funny. Why is it exactly 1 month? Why is it not 27 days or 36 days? Like the science was so perfect that they could stop it at exactly every month. No, come on. So it's interesting. I tell people with flea and tick, I don't know how you feel about this, is using half the dose, right? Because they give you these ranges of weight and you're kind of all over the map, right? Some of them, I
Right.
don't know how they are now because I haven't looked at flea and tick stuff in years. For those of you who don't know, my dog died from flea and tick medication many years ago, many years back when I was a vet tech. So I'm very, very biased for sure against it. But I have seen people. I had a cat one time that was coming to me, and it was one of the only animals I ever suggested to use it. And it was a long time ago. But his cat was just coming to me like every 2 weeks for a flea bath that we were doing. And I would make sure I would sit with the blow dryer. I'm like a monkey. And I made sure every flea, there wasn't a flea in an ear. There wasn't one stuck in an eyeball, like everything. And I would send this cat home with no fleas. It was a big white Persian cat. And 2 weeks later, he'd come back and they would be crawling in the eyes and they were just everywhere. And I thought it was an outdoor cat. Turns out it wasn't. And so you knew his house was just infested. And he just didn't, he had gone down that rabbit hole that I always caution people because I'm a very holistic person, but he had gone down that rabbit hole where he absolutely refused to use anything on the animal. But the cat was starting to become anemic. Like her gums were pale. Like this was a pretty serious. So I suggested to him to use a quarter of the pill. It was Comfortis back then that I had recommended. And I said, can you just use a quarter of the pill? And I showed him the cat's gums. And he finally did it and it worked. And so, and he just had to use the tiniest amount. He didn't even have to use the whole pill.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it works. I mean, why do we have to do the whole thing if we can do part of it? Especially when those ranges, right? Like from 0 to 20 pounds.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Oh my God.
And if my dog is 21, should I give him the one for 45? Yeah.
It's so all over the map. And then now, right, it lasts 6 months, 9 months, 3 months. Like they've got them lasting for so much longer. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's just toxic stuff. And the sad part about it too, especially for those of you who are listening that have never given it to your dogs, once you give that whole pill and they have a reaction to it, you can't take it back. It's done. You gave the whole pill. So you want to kind of start off, a little bit if you can. So, but there's a couple of suggestions on here. Wondering what you have to say about it, Dr. Bissett. What do you think about brewer's yeast and garlic?
I think those are great choices. And I would definitely use them because they will absolutely emit an odor. And I'm assuming that's the reason that you'd be doing it. So absolutely. I think that's a great choice. It wouldn't have been a great choice for that kitty, right? Because that kitty was going back into a really infested household.
Right.
But you could absolutely use it for something that's not heavily infested.
Yeah. No, there was nothing that was going to work for this cat. I mean, I had been picking and getting all these fleas off this cat for months. Nothing was going to work for it. So, and you got to be careful. I do talk about those rabbit holes, right? That people get down, and he was just not going to do it. He was so scared to put anything toxic. But there's a guy on Facebook right now. And if any of you guys that are listening to us have run across him, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it and I'm probably going to get hate mail, but he says that you should give rutabaga for every single problem that your dog ever faces. He gets hit by a car, you give him rutabaga and so even though Dr. Bissett and I really love talking about the middle ground, we also support helping your animals if they're in pain. Like we don't just go.
You're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, exactly. It's just be very, very careful.
Yeah. Use the tools that we have, but use them appropriately.
Yeah, yeah. What about nutritional yeast?
I think that's fine. I'm not sure how well that would work. Quite honestly, I think that's mainly digested. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you would see much of an effect. I'm assuming you're talking about using it orally.
I think it's from Lily. That's what she's saying. I've never heard of nutritional yeast for flea and tick stuff. I'm not really sure that much about it myself.
Yeah.
But she also writes down the neom. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I've used them before. So you think the neomodes, the little things that you put in the garden, you can
Oh
buy.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's how you say it, but you can even get them. We get them at Walmart, and you can.
yeah. Those are fabulous. I
Yeah,
love stuff like that.
I
To
put
me,
them out.
that's the greatest.
Isn't that great? Yeah, they just go out in the grass, and so I have a little grass patch right in front of my grooming shop, which of course we're getting dogs that are coming in for flea baths and stuff, and so we sprinkle it on the grass out there every year. In fact, we got to get ready to do it. It's been raining so much out here in California, which we're not used to.
That's really cool. When I had a horse farm, I would get these little flies. I would literally buy flies. You bought these little flies that I would release every spring, and they would eat the regular fly eggs. So
Really?
it was a natural way to keep flies down at a horse farm and the little flies, you couldn't even see them. They were like almost as small as no-see-ums. And so you would release them, they would eat the eggs of the bigger flies, and you would have no flies on your farm. I did that for, gosh, 25 years. And it was
That's so
fabulous.
cool.
Yeah, I never had to spray insecticides. I never had a fog. I did, proper hygiene of the barn, but just releasing those flies every spring was the most amazing thing.
It's crazy how nature will take care of itself if we let it.
Yep, 100%.
So I use garlic I know Lily, Holly's asking questions. She just got a new pup. She's super excited about. I use garlic in my dog's food every day, and then I just check my dogs all the time. Holly's here with me in Southern California, so we do get a really pretty bad flea. I don't know, different area. California doesn't really have seasons, so I hate to call it the flea season because I've seen fleas go crazy in November here because it's 75 degrees out. So we don't really have like seasons like most states do. But fleas come out when it's hot, warm, humid weather. And so anytime that is, but I keep garlic in my dog's food all the time. I just give them garlic all the time. So let's talk a little bit about some middle ground on heartworm, right? Like heartworm is pretty scary. Obviously, dogs can die from heartworm, so it's not something that like they're not going to die from fleas, well, unless they got super anemic, which is really hard to do. It's got to be pretty bad. I would imagine most of the people here aren't going to have that problem, but heartworm can be deadly, so it's really scary, and that's why your vets are pushing this drug. But let's talk about some of your ideas for some middle ground for heartworm.
Well, I would say the same thing, that it works retrograde for 6 weeks. So when you see, for us, that's seasonal. When you see the first mosquito, if you're going to use heartworm, you do it 6 weeks from the time that you saw the first one, because it's going to kill it backwards. Your other option is to test twice a year and then treat, because it first is a microfilaria. So it's in the infantile stage that's floating around in the bloodstream before it actually becomes a heartworm. So as soon as you would find a positive, you could just as easily treat with a heartworm preventative at that point and clear the microflora. I would also say that you really have to know your area. So we're in Wisconsin, but there is a huge heartworm problem in our coyote population. So in the wild coyotes that literally will walk through your yard. So if you have a large coyote population in your area and it's known to have heartworm within that pack, then you need to be more diligent about it. Or do you have fabulous humane societies or rescues that bring dogs from up south? So they'll go down south where heartworm is really, really prevalent, and then bring those dogs up in the summertime. Well, then you're going to be, if you're going to the dog park, you're more likely to come in contact with heartworm at that point. So that's part of the knowing your area and being aware of it. But then you don't need to do it when there's not mosquitoes. That's craziness. So for us, you stop. Your last one would be in like October after the first frost. That would be it. And if you were going every 6 weeks, you might do it 4 times in the season, not 12 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would do milk thistle before and after.
That's such a good thing to think about, the milk thistle. I don't do heartworm for my dogs. I'm just very confident that that's not going to happen here. But what can you talk a little bit about? I think one of the things with heartworm that really bothers me more so than the flea is that, and I know you're going to explain this so well, better than I could ever, but how most people think that heartworm medicine is a preventative. Can you explain like what the difference between putting that flea and tick stuff, right? The flea bites and dies immediately, so your dog doesn't get fleas. But heartworm is different, and so people think they're actually preventing your dog from getting heartworm.
No, if your dog, what it's doing is clearing it if they did get it. So from the first time you see the mosquito, for 6 weeks, they are completely exposed. So they could get injected. So every time a mosquito bites, they inject first and then suck the blood out. So if they were on a coyote that was heartworm positive, they would first inject that blood into your pet and then suck blood out. And if they were exposed to that, say the next week, they would have heartworm for 4 to 5 weeks. But it's floating around in its larval stage. It's not developed into a worm. And when you give the HeartGuard or the heartworm prevention, you kill everything that would have happened in that 6-week time period. And then it starts again. So the reason why you want to do a heartworm test in the spring to make sure that they don't have mature worms, because mature worms are going to continue to release their babies, their microflora and microfilaria, excuse me. And so every time you're doing HeartGuard, you're having this big immune response happening, and they're more likely to have a bad reaction to the heartworm prevention.
And it takes about 6 months. So you would get tested. Right.
Yeah. So if you tested in the spring, and then you test it again in the fall, you would be able to find it.
And then if you tested positive, then what would be the protocol for getting rid of heartworm?
If you had a negative test in the spring and you had a positive test in the fall, you would use a heartworm preventative.
That's
and kill the microflora.
Interesting. Like people don't like, you're going to give the same exact medication. You're just, if you wait to do those tests, you're just waiting to find out if they have it and then giving them the pill. It's just so weird to me. To me, I feel like it's giving somebody chemotherapy in case they get cancer. Like we'll just go ahead and, because the likelihood of you getting cancer is pretty high because grandma and great grandma and everybody had it. So you might get it. So we'll just give you chemo, give you this little chemo pill every day or once a month. Yeah. It's the same treatment. So why not find out if you're positive? We wouldn't do that with chemo. Why we are allowing that in heartworm medication just baffles my mind. I don't understand it.
I agree.
So it's so cool that we have all of this like things that we should be thinking about. Like neither one of us are sitting here going, heartworm's no big deal. If your dog gets it.
100%. If your dog has it, it is a very big deal.
Yeah. And so, but this is such a viable way to do it, is test every 6 months. It's such
you're not being stupid about it and just not doing anything.
Right.
Being intelligent about it and weighing out your risks, making your decision based on the evidence or the information that you have, but then using the tools you have in the best possible way.
Right. And, knowing your area, I think it's such a really important thing because, if your dog lays in the backyard, like in Southern California, we have mosquitoes. We don't have nearly as many as say Florida or certain areas, but we do have them. There are only certain species, I understand, that carry it. And we do have those here in Southern California. But if my dog was laying around stagnant water all day and, kind of not and eating a poor diet, that was a question I wanted to ask you. The coyotes because we have a lot of coyotes here in like so many coyotes. But are do they test the coyotes? Like, do they die from the heartworm out there?
They've got the reason that we understood this is that we had a number of research studies that graduate students would go out and capture coyote populations and test them to see. So you might contact your uh, the wildlife
Yeah.
management people in your area
Yeah.
and find out if they have tested the coyotes or not.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I will do that for everybody here in Southern California because I'm going to find out if they've tested the coyotes. I'm just curious if so I talked to a wolf expert a long time ago about the wolves, and do they die from heartworm and these kind of things. And they had never had a wolf ever die from heartworm that he knew. And they did a lot of studying. So I'm curious, like, because I'm such a believer in raw diet and nature taking care of itself, that it seems to me like nature would take care of that, because if all the coyotes die, then the ecosystem dies. So it feels like if the coyotes got it, would their raw diet somehow help them shed off the heartworm? I don't know. It's just something to think about, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think so. I would say that if a healthy dog, it's so bad. If a
Yeah.
healthy dog got heartworm, it would be
It could still take them.
it could still if you've ever seen it, it's like a spaghetti nest of
Yeah.
worms in their heart,
Uh,
literally in the organ, the heart. It's
yeah.
just horrible. So it is. I don't think it something like Giardia, I think yes. Something like Giardia can be within the dog, but they never have diarrhea and they're getting fed really well and their microbiome is good and there's this competition between good and bad. Absolutely. I don't think that's the case with heartworm.
With heartworm. Yeah, it's curious because he said, but he also did mention like the area he was the wolves are up even further up where it's colder, and so maybe they weren't being exposed as much to the which is obviously you have to take those into consideration. Where are these wolves living,
Yeah.
and are they exposed and all of that kind of stuff? So it's kind of interesting. So a couple questions about flaxseed and chia seed. What do you think about feeding that?
I think flaxseed and chia are fabulous, good fats, but they don't get converted into EPA and DHA. So ALA is the oil that you get from the active ingredient that you get from hemp seeds and chia seeds and flax seeds. For dogs, only about 5 to 15% can convert the ALA into the active form of EPA and DHA. And for cats, they can't convert it at all.
At all?
So they're great sources of fat. They're not pro-inflammatory like corn oil and canola oil and those sort of oils would be, but you can't think of them as a substitution for a true EPA or DHA, the active forms of omega-3, especially in a cat. So even if you were giving those seeds to a cat, great, it's a great source of dietary fats, but you still need to do algae oil or krill oil or anchovy or some lower level fish oil to get the EPA and DHA that you need. And for dogs, the same thing, but just not as critical in dogs as it is in cats.
Yeah. All right. So because we're coming up on our hour, and hopefully you can.
Really? Oh my God!
Are you good to stay? So
we just started.
We kept you so late. Are you sure you're good to keep going? Because we can still do.
Oh yeah.
And you're good. Okay.
No, I'm fine. I love talking to you guys.
I want to be respectful of your time. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. I hope this is helpful for you guys getting this middle ground stuff. But let's talk about the big C that it's just, I told you guys I had a couple of cases where I felt like the client was stuck between, I have to do all of this or none of this. And it came down, I'm going to talk about a particular case with a dog who had a massive tumor inside his mouth, and it turns out to be cancer. Mm-hmm. And it's so big that it's actually like the dog can bite on it and it's bothering the dog, and it's really a big tumor. And she brought him in for grooming, and we weren't even able to touch his face. He's a big he's such the cutest little dog. I mean, he's not that little, but he's just such a cute little hairy dog. And we weren't even able to groom him because he wouldn't let us touch his face. So when I talked to her, of course, she had said, yeah, he was diagnosed with cancer. And the vet said that if he went in, he'd have to go all the way down into the jaw and get so much of it. And so it became kind of an all or nothing, because she thought, well, God, I don't know if I want to go all the way down into his jaw. That's such a major surgery. It's kind of an older dog, all of this stuff. And I said, well, can he just, I know it's more superficial, but can we just at least get it out of the way of the dog's mouth? Because it's annoying him and it's aggravating him and he's biting it and it's bleeding. And she thought, I didn't even ask that. I didn't even ask. Like, I get his point that in order to get all the cancer, we were going to have to go really deep. But at this point, so it was kind of this middle of ground. And then I started talking to her about some of the other things that I want you to share with everybody about what do we have? Is that all our choices? Cancer or put your dog to, I mean, chemotherapy or put your dog to sleep? Is that it?
It isn't. That particular case that you talked about is so severe that you'd have to judge. So the idea of just debulking it, that's what that's called, just taking the mass off, but not knowing that you're not going to get it all. There's risks involved with that as well, meaning that where they would excise it, they would now be releasing all those cancer cells into the body. So now that cancer is going to spread to the lungs and the liver and to lymph nodes throughout their body. And so are you going to be making it happen faster? So that is a judgment call. Although I would say that if you do debulk it, you've now removed such a mass of cells that now you have a greater chance that other things could overcome it. So could supplying good nutrition make all the difference in the world? Could using really great herbs that break up all that stagnation and blood stagnation and bring down the heat? Could herbs do it? Could essential oils start to make a difference if you were putting them on the surface of the cancer? I think debulking it would allow the opportunity to do many other things, particularly in that dog because it was bothering him. But let's say if it wasn't bothering him, there's so many things that we can do to give our pets the tools they need to be able to fight the cancer themselves. So herbs, omega-3 fatty acids. So what we had talked about, the EPA and DHA are huge as anti-inflammatory, antioxidants. So part of cancer is you have this huge oxidative stress and the immune system has to be fighting that. So just flooding the body with antioxidants is another great way to kind of lighten the load on the immune system so it can focus on the cancer, not focus on maintaining the rest of the body. Providing those dogs with really high quality protein sources, because part of cancer is that you have the mass that we see, but it also causes what's called cachexia. So the tumor starts to steal all the nutrients from the food that animal eats, and then also starts to steal like the protein from their own muscles, the fat from their own tissues. And that's why cancer patients, human or animals, get really, really thin and debilitated because that cancer is stealing everything, not just the food that they're eating, but also their own tissue is being catabolized. So providing those animals with proper nutrition gives them the tools they need to be able to fight this, which is huge. And then providing a ketogenic diet is another huge component.
I was just going to ask you, what do you think about the keto diet?
Huge, because we know for a fact that cancer cells use glucose as their fuel. And if you feed an animal like a high carbohydrate diet, like all of the commercialized diets out there in the world are 40% to 60% carbohydrates, you're basically feeding the cancer. If you go with a ketogenic diet, which is you lower the carbohydrate level, you put a dog in a state of ketosis, which means that instead of getting their energy from glucose, they get their energy from ketone bodies. Well, cancer cells can't use ketone bodies. So you're feeding the pet, you're not feeding the cancer. So and it's a win-win because it's high protein, high fat, all the things that that body needs to be able to survive. So a ketogenic diet is really, really important for cancer patients. And I can tell you from my experience that if you do all the right things, you can sometimes get the tumor to resolve recede, and you can definitely hold it at bay. And it kind of interesting for me was in my veterinary practice, I'm close to UW-Madison, and the oncologist at UW-Madison would send me patients all the time. And here's what they would say. They would say, "We don't know what she does, but her patients always live longer, more vibrant lives and tolerate the chemo better
Oh,
and the radiation
bless
better."
them.
Exactly.
Right? We don't know what he's doing, but it's working.
Yeah, they saw the difference. And so I got all these chemo patients that came that's exactly what we did. We fed them really high quality food. We got omega-3s into them. We flooded them with antioxidants, got them on a ketogenic diet, used acupuncture and herbs, and then minimized the stress in their world so that their body could fight the cancer, not a stressful environment.
Yeah.
So that's the middle ground. And absolutely do you have to put that dog to sleep? No. There's so many things that we can do that are all about the quality of life.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this was going to cure cancer.
Sure.
Because ideally we would have been doing all of these things before the cancer happened, right? We'd be feeding them well. We'd be giving them antioxidants. We'd be giving them omega-3s so that they didn't get into that situation. But once they are, now it's about quality of life. What can we do so that they live the best lives possible? And when the cancer overcomes them, it's quick.
Yeah.
That to me is success.
It really is, because sometimes, it's just, I've seen it. I had a dog many years ago that went the chemo route, and she loved that dog and had the money to spend and all of those things. And she did it. And I guarantee you, if she was on here, and if she is on here, she'll probably know who I'm talking about. But if she is, she wouldn't do it again, because it robbed him of, and never saved him. And it robbed him of some really, really good years, or time. I shouldn't say years, but time. I think she knows enough now to know that if she had gone the keto, she was going to lose her dog to cancer. That was not going to change. But how she lost him could have changed. But that being said, I would be remiss if I didn't say this, because one of my greatest friends is she's a oncologist veterinarian, and there has been cases of chemo that has been successful and has worked. So I don't want to say never ever use chemo, because that has worked too. It did not work for this particular dog at all. And
the beauty about it, though, is again, you're going to make, as a pet parent, you can make your own decisions. You can make intelligent decisions. You can Dr. Google it to understand what kind of decisions you're making. And I think that's fabulous. But all the things I talked about, you can do while you're doing chemo.
That's the good thing about
all the patients that came to me from UW-Madison. They were all on radiation. They were all on chemo. They were getting all of those things and getting all the holistic medicine. I felt like I was giving them a foundation. I was giving them the foundation so that the chemo could work better. And now the research is coming out. I just read an article this past weekend about how fabulous antioxidants are that protect the normal cells, while the chemo is killing the cancer cells. So it really is we're kind of ahead of research in this common sense idea that good food matters. And now research is coming out that's saying, yeah, absolutely it does. And that animals or people that are eating a good diet tolerate the chemo better, and their other healthy cells stay better for longer.
The hard part, I think, for people is the marketing that goes on, right? Like we know right now there's big giant corporation manufacturing companies that make prescription diets that now have a cancer prescription diet.
Yeah. Oh
And
my.
so it's difficult for the pet owner. I mean, imagine yourself. I have been very fortunate not to have an animal die from cancer, but I can't imagine sitting in a vet hospital being told that my pet has cancer and then being told that this is the cancer food and not taking it. Who would not take it? Who would not say, "Oh my gosh, my dog has cancer, just got that bad news, but here's this cancer food." But there's a disconnect in what nutrition is. And
Oh my God. When they bring that bag home and read the ingredients,
yeah,
it's the same crap
I know.
that is in it. It's wheat gluten meal and corn byproducts and sorghum and just, but the first ingredient's chicken.
Is it
So
chicken?
it is it is a slight step up. The
Yeah.
rest is the same garbage that's in everything else. And but look at Medicus diets. So Medicus diets are we've developed them that they're made of whole food.
Yeah.
So they're healthy, wholesome, fabulous meats and organs, and it's ketogenic and it's flooded with omega-3s and flooded with antioxidants and everything that animal really needs. Now that is a true cancer diet, but it's not cheap.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot cheaper to make something out of corn and soy and barley.
Well,
than
those aren't cheap either, though.
say,
That's what makes me more angry. Is I'm like,
that's exactly it. That it's not cheap. You pay a lot for a bag of
junk.
right. Exactly.
I think of all the things that makes me the most angry is that because they put the word prescription on it, they're selling it for an enormous amount of money and playing on the fear of pet parents that their animal has cancer. And they're making millions off of it because the price, what am I trying to say? The profit on it, the profit margin is astronomical. I mean,
Yep.
why wouldn't it be? If you're going to put a whole bunch of gluten and junk and crap and all this stuff in it and then call it the cancer diet, it upsets me. But since
Right.
Dr. Bissett brought it up, I'm going to bring up because so Dr. Bissett created a diet that is a prescription diet, and it is a prescription. I can tell you that for sure because I want to sell it and I can't because I'm not a vet. So, however, she is working out something with me that if I'm selling it, if your vet gives me a prescription, then I can get it for you. But it's interesting because we're talking about middle of the ground, and before middle of the road, before we started talking, Dr. Bissett had mentioned that this food is kind of middle of the ground. It is, but it isn't, right? It's kind of like if someone comes to me and says, I cannot feed my dog anything but this prescription diet. I love being able to say, well, what about this prescription diet that is a whole fresh food diet, but also a prescription?
Yep.
And I'm getting a little hesitant there, but it makes people feel so that's why I call it a middle of the ground because I don't want you to go all the way over into this known prescription diet that's been on the market forever and ever and ever because it's junk. But here's this diet called Medicus. And so I'm a huge supporter of it. I hope that you guys and tell us really quick because I know most of the people who listen here are so I can see the names and these guys are very well versed in nutrition. They know what good is and what bad is, but they also struggle when they're talking to people. You know, they're meeting them at the dog parks, they're going through this and they're like, want to tell them. So I guess what I'm speaking to is, you know, Lily, like all of you guys that are on this and learning, D, all of you, this is your middle of the ground. So when you have somebody kicking back and fighting you and saying, no, I have to, my dog has pancreatitis, he has to have the prescription diet. This is your answer. This is your answer at the dog park. It's Dr. Bissett's Medicus diet. It will help them feel that comfort that they need, that it is a prescription. So can you tell us a little, like, I know you have a kidney diet that is a prescription. You have a cancer one, and then pancreatitis.
Yep, we have a sensitive stomach and a bland diet, and a skin diet, and a kidney diet for dog, a kidney diet for kitties, a bladder diet for kitties, and a metabolic diet for kitties. So for obese cats and cats with diabetes. And kind of there's two thought processes in therapeutic diets. One is that certain disease processes need less of certain nutrients. So for example, kidney failure, the kidney can no longer excrete phosphorus the way it should. So phosphorus builds up in the blood and then starts to have imbalances between calcium and phosphorus, and you start to get calcium laid down in your muscles and the heart muscle, just all these horrible things happening. So that the increased lifespan of cats and dogs where we control the phosphorus level is huge. So there's no question that if you keep the phosphorus level low, they live longer. So the way to do that is minimizing the amount that they eat and preventing the phosphorus from being absorbed into the body. So the Medicus diets for both the cat and the dog are low phosphorus. So we had to add some rice, and the rice is not there as a filler. The rice is there to decrease the level of phosphorus in the diet. And then we added eggshell powder and ketocin, and both eggshell powder and ketocin are whole food phosphorus binders. So when they eat it, it keeps the phosphorus in the gut. It doesn't get absorbed. So in Medicus diets, there's those that are restrictive. Those restrictive ones need a prescription. And then we also went the other direction. And in the cancer diet, it's not about restriction. It's about flooding them with all the nutritional tools they need to be able to survive. So in that instance, the cancer diets are not by prescription because they're just amazingly fabulous. Like if you were going to cook the most perfect ketogenic diet for your dog, this is what you would cook. So, but it's in a freeze-dried format so that it's shelf stable and easy to use. The sensitive stomach diet is very high in fiber, and it's all about rebuilding the microbiome and about decreasing the heat and inflammation in their gut. And then the skin diet is novel proteins, but then adding in omega-3s and omega-6 GLA to increase the skin barrier. So most of the Medicus diets are about adding the right stuff in, and then a few of them are very restrictive and should not be fed to the average animal.
So I'm going to talk about this because when I first heard about this, I am guilty. We talked about it already. I am guilty of going, oh my God, she put rice in there.
Yeah.
It took me a minute because people know, you go way back, you will hear Carrie constantly talking about why I hate rice. Yep. I hate rice for a number of reasons. And one of them is because it is a binder and it takes nutrients out of the body. So when I finally sat down with it, I was like, oh, she's brilliant. Like, oh, wait a second. She's brilliant. Of course that it would make sense to put rice into a diet that I'm trying to get the phosphorus to come out, because you can't just not feed protein, which is where phosphorus is going to cut you. Especially a cat needs protein. So what do?
And that was the problem with kidney diets. Veterinarians are 100% convinced that you need to have low protein diets. That is not true. That's been debunked. That if you don't feed them enough protein, they'll catabolize their own muscle tissue instead. So you really need to have moderate levels of really high quality protein. The downfall is that's high phosphorus. Yeah. So now you got to deal with that. And the way to deal with that is rice and eggshells and ketocin, and trying to decrease the dietary amount of phosphorus you're giving, and then decrease the amount that's being absorbed.
So one of my concerns, and we talked about this before, was, and I just had a dog just today, have this issue where he was having some medical problems, some issues, and she ended up putting him on a food that I cringe and can't even say the name of, but it's loaded in rice. And this is a dog I've known for quite a long time and has never had an ear infection because she was on a different food before. But the vet put her on one that's loaded in rice. And now the dog is starting to have ear infections. We can smell the yeast. So we had talked about this before. What do we do if we do begin to start feeding this rice to our animal with kidney failure, and then they start getting the ear infections and all of that kind of stuff? How will we deal with that?
Number one, I don't think that would happen
Okay.
because, and this goes back to the ideas of Chinese medicine, that you have to have a level of qi to have heat and inflammation. And in chronic kidney failure, that's not what you see in those pets. Those
Okay.
pets they're thin and they're debilitated and they're cold to the touch and they don't have enough life force to even mount a response like that. So you're not really going to see that. But what you are going to see is actually they will live a better life because you've restricted their phosphorus. Otherwise, you're going to have all sorts of calcium phosphorus imbalances that can affect their heart muscle, it can affect other muscles of their body. And it just be if left untreated, you know that they're going to pass from that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good answer. It's hard when you see, I think also the problem is a lot of times when I see these rice filled diets, there's not like, I have a dog,
There's got to be a reason for it.
Yeah,
These are therapeutic diets.
yeah,
And that is a really big deal. These are diets for sick animals
yeah,
that their organs are not functioning properly. And so the diet is specifically for them. You would never feed that diet to a healthy dog.
yeah,
A healthy dog needs to have a species appropriate diet that's high meat and high organs and small amounts of fabulous fruits and vegetables with antioxidants and minimal to no grains. Absolutely. Like I would not use rice in a healthy dog's diet.
yeah.
These are therapeutic diets. These are diets for sick animals that have specific reasons why they have to have that. And I think that's a hard part for
It
because
is.
so much of us we have such strong views on nutrition. I literally remember the moment that I thought, I'm going to have to add rice. literally,
I can
literally.
only imagine you sitting there going, great, I just lost all credibility. The whole world is going to hate me for this, but it has to happen.
I was just deflated, like, oh
Oh,
my God.
yep.
And I had done this whole Medicus has been like 10 years in the making.
Oh, wow.
So I have tested and tested and tested and tested, tried every type of twist and turn and this thing and that thing to be able to get the phosphorus levels down. Nothing I could do that could do it, except I had added rice to our bland diet and the nutrient profiles that I needed. We got it with rice. And I went, darn,
Yeah.
I have to do this.
Yeah.
And then I will just have to explain it to people. And hopefully, if I explain it enough over and over and over again, people will understand.
Yeah, it is hard when I remember when this is not even on the same ballpark, but I do remember when when I pulled kibble out of my business. And, I had so much backlash and so much people saying, well, you said, and you said, and you said, and you said this was the best kibble, and you said this, and you said that. And my heart wouldn't let me do it anymore. I couldn't, I had to just eat my words and say, that's what I thought then. And I've learned more. And now that I know more, I can't go back. And now every time I see someone walk out of my shop with a bag of kibble, my heart hurts a little bit. But before we go too far in that, I also want people to know, because I've been beat up for this a little bit. I strongly recognize that kibble sometimes is all that we can afford and do. So I never judge someone. My own mother feeds her dog kibble. My sister feeds her dog kibble. My nephew and my son feed their dogs kibble, which is hard for me. But I love them. Like, I'm not judging people when that is all you can do for whatever reason. I have a client right now who is struggling with her own health problems, and then the dog was struggling to get onto a raw. And I finally just told her, you got to feed the dog in front of you and your lifestyle. So I need to throw that out there, because when I talk about kibble, I always feel a little bit bad that there's somebody out there going, she's so judgy. I'm not judging. I'm just making suggestions and what.
And then add some good stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so if you're having
Middle of the ground, middle of the road.
you're having broccoli, steamed broccoli and some
Yeah.
chicken breast, and you have some left over, give it to your dog. It's a
Yeah.
fabulous way. So any nutrition is wonderful in that you can always raise that plane of nutrition. You can the next meal could be a good one. The next bowl of kibble that they feed, they could add a little bit of, they found turkey on sale at the grocery store and they cooked it up and they had some extra, not the bones, not cooked bones, but let's say you just had some extra meat. Add that to your dog's diet. You had some berries. Like if you come to my house, I have a bowl of berries always sitting out because you just have a little here, a little there. My dogs always get a little bit of that, and that's antioxidants that are really fabulous for them. So yeah, the majority of the world feeds kibble, but you can always just step it up that little bit. In fact, that the study of the Scottish Terriers that had a decrease in the incidence of bladder cancer, they only got fresh vegetables 3 times a week. And it decreased their possibility of developing bladder cancer by 50%.
Wow.
Isn't it strong?
Strong.
I mean, that is how strong it can be. I mean, you and I are purists and want the best, but do what you can do.
Yeah.
Anything gets them a step up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's such a great, just 3 times a week. How cool is that? Like 3 times a week, 50%. That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great thing. Real quick, Lily, I mean, Dr. Bissett, maybe you can, just the food that has phosphorus in it. It's mostly just meat, right?
It's
like,
meats. Yep. Meats are very, very high in phosphorus. And even the lowest meat, which is beef, is some of the lowest phosphorus. It's still like dramatically too high.
Yeah. You know what? I wonder what you think about this. So the oldest living cat on record was 38 years old, and her name was Cream Puff. And when he was questioned on, this is so interesting to me, when he was questioned on what he fed his cat, he said he fed the cat only, her entire life, canned tuna and asparagus. And I thought it's very interesting because when I looked, I was like, that's so interesting. I wonder, because cats die from kidney failure, right? Like that's what we know cats to die from. And tuna's low in phosphorus. So I was like, oh, it's so the key to this whole thing is figuring out. But now you look at how much mercury and stuff is in tuna that you kind of question, oh my God, I can't. Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. It's interesting.
We do the best we can every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's, cause it is 6:30. So, but really quick, just so we don't, because this one's important. Let's talk about the middle ground for if your dog is having something where he needs, let's say he's got back problems or arthritis, and maybe the back is so bad. I've seen this, or needs surgery on their legs, like they need, they got an ACL tear or whatever it is, and you're given or luxating patella. I'm like trying to think of all the things that like would cause you to maybe want to have to go get surgery. What are our middle ground between surgery or put your dog to sleep? What's the middle ground here?
There's so much. I mean, there's nutraceuticals like glucosamine and hyaluronic acid and chondroitin that can make the joint fluid really thick and viscous again so it can absorb it. There's tremendous amount of fabulous knowledge on physical therapy in dogs. And for luxating patellas, where you can have them stand on a ball and then they learn how to move with the ball. And there's a lot of veterinarians that are trained now in physical therapy for dogs. So there's just so much that we can do these days that you need to explore those. So acupuncture, herbs are are things that I would recommend every single day in practice. So between nutraceuticals and joint fluid replacers, so glucosamine chondroitin, herbs, acupuncture, physical therapy, water therapy. There's just so many things that you can do, but you have to seek them out. And if you needed, so let's say you needed Rimadyl or a prescription strength anti-inflammatory to bring the initial pain and inflammation down, great, but use it short term. I think that's a big thing that is lost. Those drugs are not meant to live on.
No.
They're meant to be used for short duration. So use a Rimadyl or a Medicam or something to that effect for a week and then transition to herbs. And in that time period, you're working with physical therapy. In that time period, you're adding glucosamine orally that's making the joint fluid thick and viscous. So there's so many things that you can do short of using a pharmaceutical that's going to eventually damage liver, kidneys, GI tract. So, but you got to search for them.
Yeah.
You got to find a practitioner, you got to find a veterinarian in your area that looks to those sorts of things. Even ACLs, which used to be thought that it was just if you blew a ACL, you needed surgery. And now with really good physical therapy, there's so many wonderful things that you can do that can maintain the stability of the joint for much longer.
Yeah. I have a client whose little Chihuahua tore his little ACL, and they chose not to do the surgery. They were like, we're just not going to do it. They kept him very stable for a while. They did some diet changes and some things. God, I want to say that was 10 years ago, and he's old now, but he's fine. He walks fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Everything, whatever, I don't know all the steps they made, but definitely I have seen an increase in the amount of rehab that is available and wellness. We have one here in Orange County called the Animal Wellness Center of Orange County. They have underwater treadmills. They have chiropractic. It's amazing what is being available. It's
And
just
and
some people don't know.
that's not just fluff. I mean, you can think that, oh, it's all new agey and it's this like cucumber on their eyeballs, massage therapy sort of thing. But it really is truly effective treatments.
Yeah.
It's effective veterinary medicine that can completely prevent them from having to go on to have a big surgery or have to live a long time on pharmaceutical drugs. The things that we have available to us for our pets is so much more than we've ever had in the past, and we should be taking advantage of it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I can speak for myself. I have 2 herniated discs in my neck. Thank you, dogs, for fighting me in the bathtub. I appreciate that, by the way. I know that's what it's from, but I'll never stop. And so I was offered by my own doctor the options, right? Thank God one of them wasn't to put me down, but the one that was offered was surgery. That's it. You're going to have to do surgery because there's nothing else that's going to work. I got really lucky and I did the physical therapy, which honestly didn't work for me. It may have been that particular place, but I didn't give up because I didn't want surgery. And I actually found a personal trainer whose wife had the same thing. And he did some certain exercises to build the muscle around my neck. So physical therapy was it was different. He actually started building muscles in my neck to help support. Wow. And I got to tell you, it's been night and day. It's not completely gone. But I'm like, this is very recent. And I got to say, I've been working with him for about a month and I have not had to take any Aleve or Advil or anything going on like 6 days now. So I'm pretty happy because I was, so my point is that don't give up. Just because surgery is thrown at you. I always say this, get at least 3 opinions. That's the thing I see a lot where we just feel like we have to make that decision right in front of our vet that's standing in front of us. So it's really, really hard. One question I'm going to have you answer real quick, and then we're going to let you go. Dr. Bissett is in Wisconsin and it's very late and we would keep her forever, but do you like the Adequan injections?
I do. I love them actually. I used Adequan, so it's a intramuscular injection of it's polyglucosaminoglycan, so it's like glucosamine essentially, and it is fabulous. And that was to me one of my go-to drugs. My go-to injections for dogs with arthritis
Oh,
because what it did is it quickly jump-started getting the joint fluid really thick and viscous and decreasing the inflammation in the joint. And then I continued with orals. So a high quality therapeutic level of glucosamine. And then some dogs, like let's say you had genetic laxity of your hip joints, those dogs might stay on Adequan and the oral glucosamine their whole lives. Big deal.
yep.
It's easy to give. It used to be inexpensive. I know that it's raised up recently, but it's a great drug to use. It's excellent. I love it actually.
Oh,
And
awesome.
it has no negative effects. Like there's no immunosuppressant effects. There's just no negative effects. It just works or doesn't work.
Yeah. I started taking for my neck, I started eating a whole lot of the egg skin. I don't know what else to call it. Is there another name for it?
It's called eggshell membrane.
Oh, eggshell membrane. Okay. I call it eggshell skin. That's why you're the vet and I'm not, because I just call it eggshell skin. But I've been doing that, and I don't know if that's having effect either, but I peel it off. Lori, who's the one who's giving you guys all this information, she knows I get so excited when I get a good peel, and then I roll it up and then I down it, because it's not something you can chew or put on your sandwich or anything.
And the beauty of it is it's whole food.
Right. And I do.
That's why I just keep going back to, if we ate good diets, if our pets ate good diets, that would prevent the majority of chronic disease that we have. I mean, if you're going to get banged up by a dog or I get kicked by a horse, that's going to happen. But if we and our pets ate good food every single day, that's giving us all the nutrients that we need to be able to resolve issues.
Yeah. All right, guys. Oh, look, at 9:30 here in Ontario, you guys, we got you up. We got you all up so late. But it was something, I'm just so glad that I was able to share this with you, Dr. Bissett, because you are so free with your time, but also so knowledgeable, and you can cover every single thing possible out there. And this is something that has been really hitting me a lot at work. I've been seeing a lot of all or nothing dogs where clients kind of resign themselves to it. They're like, well, he's got cancer, so we're going to just put him down. And I'm like, wait, whoa, hang on. And so it's been heavy on my heart. And so it's just such a blessing that you were available to talk about this tonight. And I hope it's been super helpful to all of you guys that are listening, to always remember, don't jump right into, I'm scared and I need to make a decision and it has to be all or nothing. It also doesn't have to be forever, right? Like Dr. Bissett has said over and over, you don't have to give that drug forever. Sometimes just back off of it and add in a little of your herbs and those kind of things. So it's just so fabulous. And I thank you so, so much for being here tonight and just being such a blessing to all these animals all over, not just in your town of Wisconsin. Just amazing. So
happy to share my views.
What?
I'm happy to share my views, and my views come from 35 years of doing this, of seeing success. So it's not just theories, it's things I've literally done in the trenches and seen dogs live long, fabulous, vibrant lives doing these more conservative treatments.
There's nothing better than that, because dogs don't lie. Dogs can't make it up.
They have no placebo effect.
No placebo. They don't. They're like, I don't know. I'm walking.
It's not their credit card.
No, it's true. They're like trying to tell their husband, "No, I'm walking, honey. It's fine." Credit card bill's $10,000. Yeah,
just put it on the card. We're fine.
No. Oh my God, it's so funny. It's true though. It's so true. I've done that myself, where I spent a lot of money on something, so I'm like, "No, it's good. It's good."
Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to the next time we speak.
Yeah, soon, soon. I just want to thank all of you guys for listening. And what I love about our listeners is they're so helpful with each other. Sometimes it's really hard when we're trying to cover certain subjects. And so I see a lot of people like responding with some of the newer people on how much garlic to give. And I keep an eye out, and a lot of our followers really kind of know what they're doing. They're kind of seasoned at this. So it's pretty amazing. So, and Lori, of course, is behind the scenes. She's the one typing all that stuff out for you. Cause if I had to, I'd be like, yeah, I didn't take typing in college or high school or anything. I'm the worst at it. I chicken peck. So we wouldn't get it done. So for Dr. Bissett, you have Cure the Bowl. How do they get, I don't know if Lori did, but I want to make sure she puts it up. So where do they go if they want to do that?
Go to Herbsmith Inc. So HERBSMITH and it'll flash up take the Curate the Bowl quiz, and you're literally getting advice from me. So so put as much detail as you can and tell me all the other medicines your dog might be on, and I'll make sure that they all work together well. And it's just a great way to kind of direct you in the right way. And it might be even giving you a referral to a veterinarian in your area that might be able to help you.
Okay. Okay. All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and head off. Actually, I'm getting a call from my work right now, so I got to head off really quick. So I will see you guys later. Dr. Bissett, thank you. Thank you so much. And I will see you soon.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.